me what a dental lab does.
You guys make teeth.
I mean, right? The difference with Glidewell and your normal dental lab is most dental labs in the U.S. are about 8 employees. Glidewell, we have 4,500 employees, maybe 5,000. But most dental labs are local, so their dentist can drive to them and check out the tooth that the technician is making. We are mail order primarily, and digital now. So if your doctor has your dentist has like a scanner, you can scan your mouth. That gets shot to us, and then we can design and mail the tooth. So we need a lot of technology there. We have a lot of automation, and we have a lot of software engineers. In my group, there's about 21, and we're still looking for people. We'll be probably about 27 or so by the end of the year. And then we have a CAD/CAM group. We have a team in Moscow. So overall, software engineers, we're probably around 80 software engineers. So let me back up. I'm director of software development now, but there was a time where I was just a green software engineer. Let me ask you a question. How'd you come here? Where'd you come from?
I just looked around online, pretty much no background, and just always liked computers and eventually wanted to do something with it.
What'd you do? What was your career before this?
Just random jobs around town, and eventually went into a little bit of IT.
Okay. And you liked it?
Didn't really like the IT part, didn't really like helping people
Sign
sign out.
who would like that?
That was just driving me nuts.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna love being a software engineer. Where did you? What's your name? Sorry.
My
where
name's
you-
Alicia.
Ryan, Alicia, where'd
Yes.
you come from?
Well, I've actually been being a mom, and I've heard that this is a booming field, and that there are a lot of opportunities here. So
And you decided to take the
I
leap?
decided to take the leap.
Very brave.
Yes.
Okay, Alicia, Ryan.
My name's John. I got laid off as a legal assistant, and before that, I was working security at Best Buy.
Okay. Back here, the quiet one.
Yeah, hi. My name's Brian. With a degree in biology from the University of California. I've been trying to get a job. Been trying to get into public health for like the past 6 years now, nonstop, and applying like everywhere. Taking all these exams for these government jobs. I'm trying to get into pharmaceutical sales, even though as a lab manager or lab assistant, lab associate, just trying to use my degree, but no luck. So I'm just gonna switch over to this industry. So.
I like it.
Hi, I'm Sean. I was teaching high school sciences, chemistry, and biology. And had a friend that went through a similar program in boot camp. And, he really enjoyed it, showed me what he was doing. I did a little bit of it and kind of fell for it then. So that's what I did here.
Nick Roger. I was in quality control for like 5 years while going to school, and working in manufacturing is just it takes way too long. They demand a lot of hours, so it's kind of hard to go to school. And switched over to computer science degree. Found out about boot camps. Started investigating, and I was convinced by some close family members that knew other people that went through boot camps that it was a good idea. And so after investigating, I took a risk and I'm here.
Okay. Raise your hand if you say after your initial experience, you really are developing a passion for this. Some of you are probably making that up. That's really what you need to be successful in this business, whether you've gone through 4 years of school or you're coming to it like you are now. Myself, my story is that English major at Whittier College. I got out and I was a writer for a little bit, assistant writer, not even like a real writer, for a financial newsletter and technical writer for some textbooks. So if you wanted to be a broker, pass your Series 7, you may buy one of our textbooks, you read it, and then you take the test. I worked at a small Chinese-owned firm that really has nothing to do with the story. Or maybe it does. Yeah, it's a little brutal place, but you know, it's one of those places with high turnover. But you know, me and the head writer, we were just writers, so we weren't concerned with everything else. Graphic designer went on vacation, and they needed a brochure completed, so they gave it to me. I completed it in Photoshop. Never touched Photoshop before. Just kind of figured it out. Photoshop, and there's an application called Quark Express at the time that we used to use. Graphic designer came back. They fired her, and then they gave me the dual role, and that was really interesting to me. You know, it was more interesting than writing. Turns out writing's really boring for the most part. And so I started to get a little more into that. Computers would break. They would give it to me and the head writer to fix. Back then there was no Google, not even Hotbot. Wow, you had to look like, what? There was no search engine. There was a thing called BBS, bulletin board. You log in, you see this weird screen. It's like if you watch movies in the 90s about computers, that's what everything was like. And so we would get on there, ask some questions, get some answers, figure out how to fix it, but maybe make some phone calls. But I had an aptitude for it, and I was good at it, and I liked it more than I liked writing. So eventually we didn't have code camps back then, so I bought a lot of books, read, and took the plunge and got a job. The reason I asked about passion is because you really do need a passion for this. My first job, despite the fact that I read all those books, it was like you read a lot of books to learn French, and then you go to France. It's way different. So my first job, I was just really quiet. Everyone was talking in a language I didn't understand, and I just worked really hard. So what would take somebody maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, could take me 10. But I would work through 10 straight hours to get it done. And so after a while, even at that job, they started to give me more and more. And it was just front end cleanup work. Back then, you had to do a lot of that. There's really not as much of that now, but clean up designers, HTML, maybe add some JavaScript, things like that. And so that company went out of business because .coms back then used to go out of business like crazy. But I just kept trying, kept getting little jobs, and eventually I just really stuck in the industry. You learn enough, you get past that initial inertia, and then in this industry, because it's so hot, once you're able to do that, you kind of can just stick. The one thing that you have to do and understand about this industry that's maybe different from others is that if you really want to be successful, you just never stop learning. I used to have like a whole bookshelf full of books. My wife hated it. She threw them all out. She said she sold them back. I don't think she sold them. She threw them all out. And now it's all Kindle. So if I open up my Kindle, I just have tons and tons and tons of books. I mean, when you think you know it all, machine learning is now the new thing, cloud computing. And so you need to always keep yourself educated. You're not going to say, it's not like another field where I'm going to graduate, I'm a political science major, and I'm going to go into whatever they do. And I'm going to kind of just learn on the job and coast. You really have to keep yourself educated. And when I say yourself, it's your responsibility. So that's the biggest difference with other industries. But there's huge rewards to it as well. So that's my story. Without going into huge detail, eventually, getting to a lead developer position, manager position, now director position, I still have to keep myself educated. There's different things to learn, but there's every day is some reading that goes on, so you have to have a block of time. You just set aside and you just, I'm taking that time to educate yourself. Any questions for me? Okay.
How do you keep yourself motivated and stimulated without being overwhelmed in the field? Like for somebody like us who's just beginning.
Well, I don't know that you do.
You're always
what was
overwhelmed.
your experience with learning something new?
It's always exciting, but I think with a lot of subjects, it seems like there's a time where you can feel like you know enough, With this, it seems a bit different. There's always something growing and changing, and sometimes it's hard to catch your perspective, so you feel like you understand enough to really put it to work.
Well, for me, learning is like this. There's that excitement. Oh, there's this new technology, this new thing. So there's the excitement, and then there's the initial, you get the sources, you get that book or whatever, and you start to go through it, and then there's the frustration of, wait, what? And then there's the huge just disappointment, feeling like I'm never, ever gonna get this. And then all of a sudden, if you just keep pushing, there's that point where it's like, I kind of get it. This is kind of making sense to me. You do that happens constantly in this industry if you're keeping yourself educated, because you're not going to be at a place where it's like, oh, I just know it all, and you have these Zen moments and people come to you and you're just like, answer. It doesn't happen. So there's going to be times where you feel overwhelmed. It's natural. I mean, it's like you have kids, right? Do you ever, when the second one comes along, you're like, I got this because I had the first one? No. There are times where you get overwhelmed, you feel overwhelmed, you feel like you don't have the answers that you should have. But you have to realize that you're in a room full of people that feel the same way. And that was the weird thing for me. And that's what made me successful as well, is that since I didn't go through the traditional 4-year, I didn't know what a software engineer needed to know and didn't need to know. So I thought you had to know everything. So I learned things about, Windows Server and client computers and things that were kind of outside. How, you have to dig into how does, there's C# framework, .NET framework, that's what they're teaching you right now. How does that work? And it helped me because most software engineers were like, I don't need to know that. The ops guys will handle the server. And so when we had big problems, I felt more comfortable, A, because I always have to dig in and research everything anyway, because there's just so much I didn't know. And B, because I had that experience of, digging in, doing the research, feeling like I'm not gonna figure it out, and then, kind of putting things together. And so that was the difference between me and even the software engineers I have today. A lot of them, they know what they know, and they feel like if they don't know it, it's dumb. You don't need to know that. Where me, I was always hungry, always learning, and feeling like, I need to know this next thing. So, to answer your question, I guess that was a long-winded way to answer it. Be prepared to have these peaks and valleys. But the thing about the peaks and valleys, it's like anything else when you put yourself out there. When you figure it out, that's like a high that you don't, and I'm not even kidding, it's a high. That a lot of people don't get to experience. When I was a writer, I used to go to 24-hour fitness. You can't tell now, but I used to go to 24-hour fitness every morning. I'd be on a treadmill running, and I would look, and there was this, I forget what they were building, but they were building something. And every day, some of it would be built, and I would think to myself, that's gotta be so rewarding. At the end of the day, they're like, what did I do today? Oh, as a writer, I was like, what did I do today? I don't really know. I couldn't always put my finger on it. So software engineering is like that. What did I do today? I did this. I made this connection. I figured out this problem, and now we've automated some part of the system. I made this button click happen. There's always something, and there's always that reward. So that's what makes a difference, and that's what makes it different, and that's what makes the feeling of being overwhelmed. That's what makes the reward so great, I think. I feel like I just answered every.
How would you figure out what to learn next? Because there's a lot of stuff out there.
That's a good question. That is overwhelming itself. So what you need to do is just focus. So if you want to be a front-end developer, now there's lots of little frameworks. Pick one and understand. The thing about where you guys are right now is you're only going to understand so much of it. And that's, again, what helped me is when you feel comfortable in that framework, learn a new front-end framework. and you're gonna figure out things about the previous one that you thought you understood or you didn't quite understand. It's gonna become more clear to you. And then after a while, once you get really good at front end, you know, now start to dig into the back end stuff. And you're gonna start to figure out, you're gonna learn more about the front end as you start to dig into the back end. But you have to compartmentalize it. I had a developer who, he did always wanna know everything, but he wasn't able to bite it off in chunks. And that's a sin as a developer, no matter what you're doing. If I give you a project and you can't break it down into chunks, you're not gonna be successful. But his problem is, you know, there's all these concepts, so he would try to go wide and I'm gonna learn all these concepts, I'm gonna learn everything about them, and he would just get mired. I call it the rabbit hole. So you wanna make sure you don't do that. There is so much to learn. Pick something, focus on that, and then pick the next logical thing. And you have to realize, like with me, maybe it was skills developed early, or maybe it was coming from English literature background, but composition, and a large part of what you do as a developer is composition. You guys are learning object-oriented programming. For me, it was because it made sense, right? Objects and how things relate. It was kind of like English composition for me. Breaking things down and structuring them, same way. Some other things, like they're probably not teaching you big O notation, stuff like that. And so I realized, like, there's something that I'm very good at. I'm gonna focus on that. All the math behind it, you know, eventually maybe I'll get to that. But right now I'm gonna focus on what I'm good at. And that helped me throughout my career.
Was there any point in like your career where you hit kind of like a wall to move forward? And so like, how did you get around that?
A wall to move forward? You mean in learning and advancing my career?
Either, just like there's something that you just didn't qualify for, or just a program that you just couldn't get that you needed to understand.
You know, when I first started, I probably went on 8 interviews before I got my first job. I would learn something, so I took every interview as a learning opportunity, and that's what you should do as well. They would ask me a question I didn't know the answer, I'd go, you know, try to figure that answer out. What I really learned from all that is keep your mouth shut, because software engineers love to talk about how smart they are. And that's the first job I got, is I just sat there and he was drawing all this stuff, and I didn't understand what he was drawing, and at the end he said, okay, when can you start?
Oh.
Because, yeah, and you know, that's a large part of it too, is learn to listen. But I would say that part of my career. Later on, there's something that I just really needed to, I don't know if that happened. Career advancement was, I mean, that has never been a problem. There are times where I said, I don't think I'm ready for something, but again, the market is so hot that I don't know that that's a problem if you work hard. What helps you too is you're gonna be different than, possibly, I'm looking around to see. You might be different than most software engineers, and that's definitely how I was different, is that I had social skills that a lot of them don't have, and you're gonna be surprised. You know, if you get a job in this field, they don't know how to talk to people or relate to people very well, for the most part. They might argue with me, but they'd be wrong. And so, what will help you is relying on those skills that aren't so technical, if you have those skills, and learn to develop that, because they don't teach that in college. You know, when you get your CS degree, it doesn't come with a lot of social skills, leadership skills. Those are the kinds of things that companies will look for as well, besides whether or not you write, you know, great code. And in fact, your managers or their managers aren't looking at your code. Can you get things done? Do you accept responsibility? Will you, be accountable for the work that's given to you? And how do you relate to other people? A lot of that is what's going to, when they say we need somebody to lead a group of people, that's what they're gonna think about. So if you're looking for advancement, that will help you.
So this actually ties back into what you were just saying, but when you're hiring new developers, what are you looking for, and how does, like, do you look for people from these like coding boot camps or 4-year degrees? Like, how do we compare?
No, and maybe it's because of my background. I don't have a specific. We structure our interviews for what we're looking for. We're in an agile environment. I don't know if you guys have covered that, Scrum, Agile. So we have teams, small teams of developers that are focused on an area. And what is very important for those small teams is that they can collaborate, that they can commit to a scope of work in 2 weeks and get it done. So what we do when we interview, we do a technical interview. We try to check for aptitude. So do you know C#? Can you write a function on the board? I'm not that interested in that because we can teach you how to do that effectively. How do you think? So we give you a problem and we want to see how you break down that problem. And then if we're happy with that, we bring you in with a group of people that are also interviewing. And now in that group, we're going to give you a problem and we want you to break it down. We want to see who is taking a leadership role, who's kind of just sitting back and letting everyone else do the work, who's listening, who's not listening. That's really what we look for. And we might be a little different than other companies. Every company is going to be different. Some, they want you to take pretty much like a programming test. They want to understand if you understand the syntax of whatever language that they use. So it's just different, but that's how we do it. We really want people who have the technical aptitude, but then can collaborate and work with other people, because that's a large part of it. You don't have to know everything. You're on a team. If somebody's strong where you're weak, that's fine. As long as you guys can collaborate and get the job done. And you'd be surprised. I mean, we've had in these interview sessions, because there can be 5-6 hours in a group interview like that, we've had people yell at other people before because, after 5 hours, you are who you are. You're kind of tired, you've been trying to figure out this problem, this person's not making sense to you, or they're talking too much, or they're talking too little, and then, the real you kind of comes out. So that's what we look for.
You have like mirror glass, like a one-way mirror, and you guys
Sit right there. No.
Yeah.
We sit right there, they get stressed,
Yeah.
and we want to see that. Do you get stressed, and how do you behave when you're
Plays well with others.
frustrated? Yeah.
A lot of times, are you looking for like one person that, or are you hiring the teams? Like if you see like a bunch of people working together, like, that's going to be our team.
I would say if we see like a few people that are really working well together, we're still judging them individually, but we could bring in, right now we have 6 openings, so we could bring in 3 people out of that group. In fact, I think we've done that once before with 2 or 3 people. We brought in and made an offer to. So, it just depends. And it depends on if we're in a place where we feel like we can bring on more junior entry-level people, then we don't mind doing that. If we're in a place where we feel like we definitely can't afford to have junior people right now because we have too many, then yeah, we would exclude probably a junior developer, unless they really knocked it out of the park.
I'm assuming it's probably varied throughout your career, but how much time would you try to dedicate to learning any chance you got?
Oh man, so younger, obviously it was, get home and just start reading, spare time, online reading. Right now, so I try to do it, first thing in the morning. There's some sites I go to just to keep up. Flipboard is great because you just kind of flip through them. And then there's just pockets of time. I try to block out time during the day, not every day, but there are certain days where I can get more done. I was just telling Harrison, I downloaded and installed Visual Studio Code a few days ago because I haven't written any code in a while. So just to play around, get hands-on with some new languages. So.
What do you think of it?
I downloaded it, I opened it up, I closed it. I'll get there.
That's good for the day,
Yeah.
It's progress.
I have full-blown Visual Studio, so I just wanted to, because I think Golang plays better with Visual Studio Code. That's a new language, and it does with the full blown. So
Golang?
Golang. You haven't taught them Golang?
Yeah, I know,
Uh-oh, sorry.
So all the cool kids
Took
are
it
going.
away.
I'm not going to either.
Oh, you're not going to? Why not? It's just one of those cool new things. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you feel like, looking back, when you approach a new area of learning, there were any patterns that were optimal in terms of how you kind of circumvented or kind of digested like a new realm of information? Even more specifically, was there a ratio of coding to just reading that you found was like an optimal?
Yeah, you know, you have to be hands-on with it because even me, I mean, I'm used to reading, right, English literature, but it sticks more if you can read a chunk and then do something in it. And now, I mean, the videos are great too because you can follow along. They have the samples that you can download. So you always make sure you're hands-on and you build something. It's kind of like, you know, what I said about being a software engineer and breaking things down into small chunks. Same kind of thing, right? So you want to learn something, you have to break down how you're going to learn it, how you're going to create something. When good enough is good enough, and get back into the literature of it or the video or whatever. So I would say it would be a mistake to try to read a whole book and now I'm going to do this thing. And because it's not so much a problem with the books anymore because they're online, they have like their errata sections and like again there's videos, but there's a lot of books when I was reading just had mistakes. And so you wanna uncover those mistakes early on or you can get stuck. And that is even more frustrating. It's like, the guy says it's supposed to do this and I'm doing it, it's not, you know, it's not happening. So make sure you're hands-on and make sure you're using other sources as well. So when I want to learn something, I try to get multiple books as well and just kind of compare different sections, read through this section, now how does this other guy explain it? Or go online, how do they explain it? Just because of that. And for me, there were certain ways of writing that fit how I thought better. And I really believe that, I mean, the best thing that ever happened to me is when I realized, you know, I'm really not that smart. I have a skill. You know, if you give me something where I was always good at those things, which one of these is not alike, you know, or which one of there was this one test I took a long time ago where it had like, looked like, you know, basically giant Rubik's Cubes. There's these blocks and pieces would be missing or colored a certain way and had a series of them. Something like that I'm always good at. And so I figured out there must be a pattern of the way I think or learn. You know, that is just me, that's my skill. Other people, they learn different ways. And there are certain things that come natural to them. So instead of getting frustrated and thinking, well, this is stupid because I don't understand it, I just figure, I'm not understanding this, so I need to read something else that explains it in a different way. So.
Okay, cool. And if you maybe were to go back in time and have all your kind of
I would invest money in like Google and not be a software engineer.
Fair point.
Yeah.
If you had your programming knowledge kind of wiped away and you had to kind of relearn everything with the experiences that you have now, how would you do anything differently, or did you feel like that was productive, it got you to where you are now?
You know, I think what I would do is, it's hard because I think if there was anything that limited me, it was not realizing soon enough that most people don't really know that much. You know, so when you feel like you're the one, there's some fear associated with that. And so it's that fear that kind of limits you. And I would have even taken on more. Probably that. Because they just don't, you know. I have guys that have master's degrees that the stuff they don't understand, it's like, what? You know. So I think that.
Okay.
And I've told them it's good, that'll be mind blowing once they're out in the field and they come across people that have been doing this for 6-10 years, and you're like, wait, you don't know this or you don't know that? Sometimes it's mind blowing, yeah.
Yeah, especially people that have been doing it like 10 years. Because they could be people, most people in software, as they go on, they don't keep educating themselves. They stick to that thing they know, and that's their tool. And when there's a problem, they take their tool out and they try to solve it with that. And again, they're the ones that are gonna be, this new tech, that's stupid. And just dismiss it. And so you'll be surprised, yeah, what they don't know. And it seems like their world kind of narrows as well. So that's the biggest thing.
Okay. So as an English lit major, what's your favorite book?
It's just wait for that.
What's my favorite? You know what?
Favorite author.
I don't want to. When I was it's still from, I think it was elementary school through middle school, I read, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, and then there's this one book that comes before all of them. It's like huge tome.
Silmarillion?
Yeah. Is that how you say it? Actually, I don't mean people who've read it. I always called it the Sumerian. So yeah, that's probably my favorite book, just because it was so interesting to me. I kind of even barely remember it, but when I first picked it up, I think I was in the 5th grade. And I put it down quickly because it was about music and creative. What is he talking about? But then later on, I picked it up again and I loved it. So yeah, in that I don't read a lot of books anymore except for technical books, and not even those now, technical articles. So reading is something that.
So what do you do for fun besides programming?
Well, you know what? Netflix now. Because at this point, when I go home, I just want to turn off. I try not to even open a computer. I just want to turn off. So mostly that, and then play with kids. I try not to even, my phone is buzzing like crazy right now, but I've learned to just kind of ignore that stuff and stay.
Compartmentalize.
Yeah. That's it. I don't play video games. I try to play a little Xbox. I'm trying to play a little Xbox with the kids, and I really learned, one big thing I learned about myself is I don't even think I like computers that much. If I could get paid this much to pick strawberries, I might do that. Because it sounds peaceful, right? You just walk through the field. But you know what I do? I like building things. So.
And the return.
Huh? Oh, and the return. Yeah. Yeah. So. And you guys, you'll get to maybe this later, but not in this class, but just in your career. I do like learning things. So right now, my big kick is leadership because I'm in this position. I'd never thought of leadership before. I did just, I was telling somebody when they would say, LeBron James is a leader in the locker room. Like, hey, he's the best player on the team. Of course they're gonna follow him. But I have learned that leadership is a real thing, and how you do it can affect outcomes. So that's what I'm really focused on. But I don't read a lot of those books either.
If you want entertaining books on leadership, Starship Troopers and Ender's Game are
Yeah.
great ones.
Ender's Game, that's good.
To analyze the leadership of the different people in them, and you'll learn a lot just from reading those 2 books.
On my Kindle I have, I was gonna read the Robot series. Is that what it's called?
Isaac Asimov?
Yeah.
Right, robot.
Yeah. I started, I got like 2 chapters in.
There's a Foundation trilogy.
Yeah, I think this one, Foundation, isn't that like a huge?
That's what you said, yeah.
But one thing that I thought was interesting is that looking, my experience now, leadership and technology, is reading things like this, and just seeing how authors portray certain individuals, and then the technology that's used, and when I was reading for pleasure before, I never really just thought about the kinds of things I think about now. So for me, except for the fact that I can't get 2 chapters in and I just put it down. But that's, I would say, if I leave you with something, and it kind of goes back to that fear thing I was talking about. Thinking differently, don't be afraid to do that, because now that I've been through what I've been through, I really appreciate people who are fearless and think differently. So like you hear at Elon Musk and he wants to go to Mars. You know, before I kind of will act at that. Not that I think he can get to Mars, but you appreciate just the thought process and the willingness to look at a problem and think about it differently. So there are people that I appreciate more now than I used to. I hope that was useful.